So I'm calling the regular bi-monthly meeting of the Board of Directors for MMWD March 17th, 2020 to order. What may be a bit self-evident here, I am Ben Hornstein, the General Manager. As part of the district's emergency response planning efforts, all of our board members will be fully participating remotely. With that, I'll take a motion to adopt the agenda.
Move approval to adopt the agenda.
Second. Oh, sorry.
I'm so sorry. So we're gonna go ahead and do a roll call. Director Bragman,
Aye.
Director Gibson,
Aye.
Director Collier,
Aye.
Director Quintero,
Aye.
Director Russell.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, now we have public expression, and this is anyone wishing to speak on an item other than those listed on this agenda will be recognized at this time. And we have two ways to do this tonight. One is by email. Where's the, which for folks that haven't heard and that are viewing this meeting, it's at boardcomment@marinwater.org. I believe we do have a couple email comments that have come in.
Yes, for a non-agenda item, I have one comment, and that is from John Carapiet. His comment is as follows: when will this board stop figuring out more ways to increase revenue from a receding and poorer taxpayers and start a real program of decreasing expenses? Now that we are going into a recession, you might get going and pay down unfunded pension debt and do job consolidations and layoffs. The stock market implosion will ensure your huge unfunded pensions will further balloon. You might start at the top and get rid of your paid dental plans for directors who have a part-time public service job. Let's see your real fabric. Good luck and see you in November. That's all for comments.
Okay, with that, and do we have any comments of folks that may be in the room that we set up for anyone who came here physically?
Yes, for a non-agenda item, I have one comment, and that is from John.
So apparently not. So with that, we'll move on to Director and General Manager's announcements. I'll begin, if that works for the board. I do have a few comments I did want to share. Speaking mainly to the public, I wanted to note that the board and the staff at MMWD have proactively implemented an action plan to protect the health of our customers and the safety of our employees during this coronavirus emergency. First and foremost, it's important for the public to know that the water you receive from the district remains safe to drink. We are very fortunate here to have a high-quality, locally sourced water supply. And run by a team of professionals, the water treatment plants are designed to remove viruses and bacteria. Our distribution system is controlled and routinely monitored from the lakes on Mount Tam to the customer's tap. Our water continues to be safe and of the highest quality. We also have plans in place to ensure that under any scenario, we will continue to provide all of our customers with safe, high-quality drinking water. We've activated our Emergency Operations Center, and we have developed a strong business continuity plan. Our business continuity plan identifies essential activities and outlines specific measures to be taken to guarantee our customers' water supply continues to flow. At the same time, it takes into account the need to protect our employees and to provide the safest work environment possible, including responsible teleworking options. Much of our staff works in the field, maintaining and repairing equipment and responding to issues like water main breaks or broken hydrants, often in the middle of the night. The approach to this work has also shifted to ensure that our field staff remain safe. We have also planned for and are equipped to deal with a range of scenarios, including strained supply chains for essential equipment and treatment supplies. We are ready. To protect the public and district staff, we are looking at closing our customer service office and have instituted a range of system improvements to handle all customer inquiries and meet all customer needs seamlessly. Similarly, we have canceled all volunteer events until further notice. While our watershed office will be closing to the public, our watershed remains open, and we'll be assessing that situation as conditions change to ensure the safety of the public and district staff. We also want to be mindful that the district business operations must continue, including routine meetings of the Board of Directors. To protect the public and our staff, we are urging the use of our live stream option rather than attending these meetings in person. We have provided an avenue for public comment and are accepting comments via email at boardcomment@marinwater.org. boardcomment@marinwater.org. At this time, we have canceled both our March 19th Watershed Committee meeting and our March 20th Operations Committee meeting. Further meetings may be canceled on a case-by-case basis. Before I wrap up, I want to thank the board and our staff. As a team, we have worked to get the district prepared and well-positioned to handle this public health emergency. So with that, any director comments?
This is Jack. I have one. You hearing me?
Yes, we are.
Yeah,
Okay.
loud and clear.
All right, good. I assume everybody either knew or certainly would anticipate our biennial conference of the North Bay Water Association, which was scheduled to take place April 3rd, has been postponed to a date uncertain.
Any other comments?
I have a comment, please. Go ahead.
Okay, Director Bragman.
Okay, I didn't know. No, I just want to thank Ben and the staff for making all the arrangements and being so nimble, especially as far as communications concerned. And I would like to just mention that Governor Newsom apparently made an announcement today about school closure. Schools may be closed for the remainder of the school year, which means that our customers are going to have their kids home. And I am concerned about whether the public health protocol of hand washing, plus having more residents in the house, how that's going to affect residents' water consumption. And for the board to keep an eye on water consumption and to possibly consider providing some kind of public health credit to customers to reduce the cost of water and to encourage compliance with the public health protocol of hand washing. So I just wanted to put that on the table for us to consider, because as this virus kicks in, it just seems like it's getting faster and faster and having a greater and greater impact on our lives. So I just think we obviously need to be aware of it, but just to put that out there for us to consider perhaps in more detail in our future meetings.
This is Larry Russell. I have just one thing. Everybody stay healthy.
Good point.
Any other board comments? Okay.
This is Armando, and I'd also like to chime in and just say thanks to the board and the staff, or to the staff, for the very clear communication that you've exercised with all of us as we've gone through these contingencies. And I think it's a good indication of how we will continue going forward as we deal with the changing waterscape in front of us. So thank you.
Yeah, this is Cynthia, and I also want to express my thanks not only to the staff and my fellow board members, and in particular Ben for his leadership. It's been very heartening to see how the district management has jumped in and how everybody's pulled together. And for anybody listening live stream, I also want to thank the community. It's been a very challenging time, and we're going to have to spend a lot of time navigating this all together. But it's really heartwarming how people have pulled together. So my thanks to everybody.
Okay, with that, we'll move to the the minutes of the March 3rd meeting. Are there any public comments on that item? No. With that, I'll take a motion to approve the item. First, we take the motion.
So
Motion
moved.
to approve the, this is Jack, I'll second.
Hi, great. I'm sorry. So we're going to go ahead and do a roll call. Director Bragman,
Aye.
Director Gibson,
Aye.
Director Collier,
Aye.
Director Quintero,
Oh,
Aye.
could have done that as part.
Director Russell.
Got it.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, now we'll take the rest of the consent items. Is there a motion to adopt the items 2 and 3 on consent?
Really quickly, do we have any public comment on the consent calendar prior to adoption?
Okay, with that, we'll move to the motion for items 2 and 3 on consent.
Director
So moved.
Bragman,
We need a motion in a second.
You got the motion. I'll second it.
Director
Mondo motioned it.
Right.
Thank you. Director Bragman,
Aye.
Director Gibson,
Aye.
Director Collier,
Aye.
Director Quintero,
Aye.
Director Russell.
Aye.
Okay, moving to the regular calendar items. Item 4, GM report. Those items do seem like so long ago with everything going on. Any public comment on the GM report? So with that, a motion to approve the GM report.
So moved, Jack.
Second, Armando.
Director Bragman,
Director Bragman, aye.
Director Gibson,
Aye.
Director Collier,
Aye.
Director Quintero,
Aye.
Director Russell.
Aye.
Okay, item 5. This is the ordinance 446 proposed amendments regarding ADUs. We'll get into it in some detail here. Is that, Mike, you're
Yeah.
taking us through it?
Yeah. Good evening, board members. At the December board meeting, the board adopted Ordinance 445 in accordance with Assembly Bill 881, which determined that certain accessory dwelling units and junior accessory dwelling units would not be charged a connection fee or be required to install a separate meter. And when we took that action, it was specific to Assembly Bill 881, and we recognized that detached ADUs would still be subject to a separate meter requirement and a separate connection fee. And the board asked us to bring this back earlier this year to discuss amending the code to allow detached ADUs to have the same provisions. And so at the February Operations Committee meeting, the committee discussed amending the district code to provide that certain detached accessory dwelling units would not be subject to a connection fee or a separate requirement for a separate meter. And so tonight before you, we have Ordinance 446, which specifies which types of ADUs would not be subject to a connection fee or a separate water meter requirement. And those are shown in the staff report, and I'll just briefly run through those tonight. And those criteria are: only one ADU shall exist on a single-family residential lot with an existing single-family dwelling and existing water service. The total floor area for a detached newly constructed ADU shall not exceed 1,200 square feet. Compliance with the district's water conservation rules and regulations is required for both the new ADU and the existing single-family residential dwelling on the property. And then finally, either the primary residence or ADU is owner-occupied. So tonight, we are recommending that the board conduct a public hearing and adopt ordinance number 446, which waives the requirement for the new installation of a separate water meter and payment of a connection fee for specified newly constructed detached ADUs, and amends sections 110407 and 1156040 of the district code. And earlier tonight, we did provide you with a red line of ordinance 446. There were some cleanup items we needed to take care of. We didn't want to further restrict the attached units, and so we inadvertently did that with the new ordinance, and we've changed that so that that restriction is no longer in place. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions, and Jared is here tonight and will join me in answering any questions you may have.
So with that, we'll move initially to board questions to staff.
Could I begin? This board member Bragman here. So thank you for, Jared, thanks for drafting this up, and staff for doing the background. It's a lot more work than meets the eye. So really do appreciate it. All the due diligence. And also the other members of the board, their cooperation and encouragement in moving this forward. My only question was, when we discussed this at our last meeting, I brought up one further condition, which is that the fee waiver would go to existing MMWD customers that have been customers for 1 year, and that's not in the ordinance. So I was hoping we could add that as a condition.
Yes, Director Bragman, I believe that's possible. I'm looking at the ordinance right now. If you go down in section 3 of the draft ordinance, I believe it's on the 4th sentence there, if you have a copy of it in front of you.
Hold on. Is this the one that was in our packet?
Yes, so it's the one that's in the packet, and also the red line version that's provided in the packet as well.
And so can you just direct me where I should be looking again, please?
So within section 3, if you go down to the 3rd sentence there, where it starts with located on a lot with an existing primary residence that has an existing water service. Within that, we can definitely tweak the language regarding the existing water service if there's a specific period that you would like, or we can clarify that further to say existing district customer.
Yeah, I think it would be a good idea because, I mean, I think it should benefit district customers, and it's going to discourage people from coming in and scooping up properties and just speculating on properties. So I think the 1 year condition is fair and does the trick.
Okay. We'd like to hear if other board members have comments on the staff report and/or the proposed additional tweaking of the language proposed by Director Bragman.
I think the background here, I have gotten a number of favorable emails on the legislation to begin with. Obviously not with the redraft necessarily, but I read the redraft, and it strikes me as a good catch and a fair thing to do. I intend to vote yes.
Any other comments from board members? If not, we would open it up for public comments.
No comments from me.
No comments from me.
No.
Okay, did we have any public
This is
comments
Jack.
on this item?
Go ahead.
Yes, so we have two public comments on item 5, which I'll read. The first comment is from Richard and Ann McConnell. My wife and I want to add an ADU to our residential lot detached from our house. Our plan is to demolish an existing shed and build on its site a prefabricated 390 square foot ADU that would meet all 4 of the A to D criteria listed on page 5, your agenda item 5. Besides helping to relieve the much discussed Marin housing shortage, I, as a nonagenarian, am conscious of the potential advantage of being able to house a 24/7 caregiver if needed. We suggest those goals are probably shared by many other of your customers. Your staff has informed us that under the existing rules, our plans do not qualify for waiver of your requirement of a separate meter since it involves new construction as opposed to a conversion. We respectfully suggest that is an unwise and unfair basis for your determination of whether to impose on a modest ADU project costs of up to $35,000. See your agenda, Table 2. New prefabricated construction is typically less costly than a stick-built conversion, so your rules tend to subsidize the more costly projects. We respectfully suggest that the solution is for you to adopt your staff's proposed option 2. For us, and perhaps for many others to follow, your waiver of the separate meter requirement and fee for a new connection would make the difference between proceeding with our affordable ADU project or abandoning it as an infeasible dream.
Okay, do you, the second comment?
Second. The second comment is from Pascal Sisich from San Anselmo. These are my public comments and concerns for your consideration. I would like to begin my comments by thanking Mr. Paul Morrison, who provided excellent customer service to me on Monday, March 16th. Paul took the time to talk about my ADU project and then promised to review the ordinance language in regards to my concerns, and then called me back to provide me with clear and accurate information. I thank the board for initiating reforms to the financial impediments of adding ADUs to district homes. As you know, ADUs are probably the single best tool we have to allow people to age in place and provide more affordable living units in Marin County. I fully support the passage of this ordinance change. I have one concern. I hope that there will be no deed restrictions placed on any JDU or ADU by the district. In fact, I believe the new state laws recently passed, such as SB 13, prohibit any agency from placing restrictions on an ADU in the approval/permitting process. Adding an owner occupancy requirement in order to obtain reduced or no connection fees is completely contrary to the spirit, and I believe the letter, of these new state laws. We are all trying to encourage ADUs, not come up with new ways to discourage their development. Any perceived protection that a deed restriction might provide is outweighed by a loss of a home value because of that deed restriction. Given the cost of developing an ADU, it's hard to see how a speculator could profit from its creation. Please consider that a JDU and ADU could be used in a number of ways to achieve the property owner's goals of affordability and to provide for future needs of aging in place. 1, a home could be owner-occupied and the ADU rented. ADU could be occupied by the owner and the main home could be rented. ADU could be used by a home care or home health aide so the owner could age in place, or the entire home and the ADU could be rented and the owner could move in with other family members, providing income to pay for health care and other age-related expenses, or pay for a residential care facility without selling a family asset, or worse, moving away from family and community. I believe deed restrictions are unnecessary, counterproductive, and limit the flexibility of having a JDU or ADU. Thank you for considering my comments. And that's all the comments we have. Oh, I think I have one more comment that just came in. This is a comment from Jordan. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today. My name is Jordan Wheel, and I was born and raised here in Marin County since 1981. I purchased my first home in 2009 when I could just barely scrape enough money for a down payment on a small 1,000 square foot home. Over the last decade, my family has grown a bit, but we have made the small home our own. We never fully remodeled due to high cost restraints and design challenges with our small home. This last fall, my family and I decided to embark in a small backyard studio project. We figured that this was the most cost-effective way that we could build more space for our growing family and create a space for my wife and I to work from home. Unfortunately, due to the size of our home and the layout of the land around it, it just wasn't feasible to add to the existing home or to convert an existing structure. We chose the option of building this structure as new, detached ADU from our main residence. This option fit much better with the property layout and the budget for the project. We now find ourselves halfway into the build, and we are now discovering fees that are beyond affordable for the scale of this project. The loophole in the new ADU law says that Type 4 ADUs can be considered as new dwellings and will be charged the regular new connection and CSMA fees, according to what a new construction single home family would be expected to pay. ADUs built within an existing structure or that share an exterior wall with the main residence are void of having to pay these fees. This stipulation in the law does not create a fair playing field for all ADU projects. I believe all ADUs should be treated equal, or at least all under a designated square footage. I urge you to adopt a more holistic approach to your fee structure in 2020 for ADU projects within the Ross Valley District. I want to remind the board that these are not single-family homes, and they should not be treated as such. Thank you for your time, Jordan.
I did want to move to open the public hearing as we discuss this further. So that concludes our public comments. Are there any further board discussions, comments?
Could I just weigh in for a second on Mr. Pascal's comments? The ordinance doesn't require a deed restriction. I actually favor deed restrictions, but I understand there's some hesitancy to require them. I do support owner occupancy. I think that's a good policy, and I think most of the folks that have looked at the state legislation have taken exception to the fact that it doesn't include that type of requirement. So I think we've really hit the sweet spot with this ordinance, and I support it. I would like to see that one little addition that I mentioned at the beginning of the hearing. So that's my comment for now.
Any further board comments?
Armando, I have none.
None for me.
Jack, I have none.
No, none.
Okay, with that, I'll close the public hearing and we'll entertain a motion.
Ben, really quickly, if I may, I suggest that we wait and see if there are a few more comments for a minute or two, since it is a public hearing.
The streaming video is delayed by about 2 minutes.
Okay.
I actually have one more comment that just came in. Thank you. I was going to catch you. Okay, so this comment is from Marcia Mather Thrift. Okay, one moment here. I support the staff's recommendation to adopt Ordinance 446, which includes Option 2, the full waiver of new service and connection fees for detached ADUs. Current regulations for ADUs and JDUs are unequal. Current new service and connection fees of approximately $20,000 plus for detached ADUs creates hardship If not waived, these requirements will prevent my family from building a new 418 square foot detached ADU at our home that can provide housing and help us retire. Unequal fees such as these are out of date when we need housing, greater infill, and better ways to handle urban expansion and protect open space. Our ADU will replace a poorly constructed 1950s-era existing one-room structure that needs to be torn down. We have been planning the ADU as our retirement strategy, both short-term and long-term. Please understand that unless you stop Ordinance 244, we will not be able to build that structure. We are ordinary people trying to survive and be able to retire in Marin. I am 73, my husband is 75, and we are still working. I have spent more than 4 decades working for the public benefit, including a cleaner San Francisco Bay, and most recently, building the Rosie the Riveter National Park in Richmond. This hasn't made me wealthy. My husband is a woodworker, essentially an artist and not a business person, and thus we were among those hard hit during the last recession. We put what resources we had into good educations for our daughters so that they would become good citizens with worthwhile jobs and strong public benefit values. If the board does not approve the proposed waiver, we will have to sell our property and move elsewhere, away from our children and grandchildren. Our ADU, if we can build it, will provide retirement income and housing for someone in Marin. In the long term, it will provide housing for one of us when the other is gone, and then our primary residence can offer a home for another family. The staff recommendation supports both a vibrant, diverse population in Marin and accomplishes wise strategic objectives that include housing creation and watershed protection, thanks to infill in existing housing zones. I hope the board will recognize these benefits and adopt the proposed new ordinance. Thank you for your consideration.
Okay, so we'll move on from public comments. Are there any board comments or a motion?
I'd like to move approval.
Really quickly, for clarity, Director Bragman, on your motion, that includes the restriction that the individual be an existing district customer for 1 year?
Yes, please.
Okay. And we are talking about the red line draft of the ordinance, correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
And this is Armando. I'll second that motion.
Director Bragman,
Aye.
Director Gibson,
Aye.
Director Collier,
Aye.
Director Quintero,
Aye.
Director Russell,
Aye.
Okay. With that, we'll move on to item 6. Mike, is you going to be handling that?
Yes. The district has held a 10-foot, 1,800 square foot right-of-way at 25 Chateau Place in San Rafael for about 60 years. We have no intention of using this for a pipeline, and there's no current pipeline in this location. The property owner, Mr. Diak Jones, is interested in making improvements on his property and would like to acquire the easement from the district. And so we've been in discussions with Mr. Jones and have reached a amenable amount in the amount of $7,500. And so we're requesting tonight that the board authorize the general manager to execute the quitclaim of 1,800 square foot of right-of-way to the property owner, Diak Jones, in the amount of $7,500. Thank you.
Any public comments on this item? No. Any board comments? So do we have a motion?
I'll move approval
I'll
of
second.
release it. Go ahead.
Sounds like a great idea.
Director
I'll
Bragman,
second what Cynthia just said.
Director Bragman says aye.
Director Gibson,
Aye.
Director Collier,
Aye.
Director Quintero,
Aye.
Director Russell,
Aye.
Okay, with that, we'll move to item 7. This is our initial presentation
I think
of
you-
the-
Do you have to close the hearing, or did you already do that?
Already did that.
I did already do that before we came around
Okay,
the second
okay,
time.
great.
Thank you, though. So item 7 is the Draft Wildfire Resilience Plan 2020. This is an initiative that staff began probably 6 or 8 months ago as an effort, as you'll hear, to compile all of the work that we do to protect and respond to wildfires, and also to identify needs, data gaps, and opportunities to increase our preparedness. And I think it's going to do a great job in terms of positioning the district in a stronger position to meet this new threat that we face, this emerging challenge that we face. And really, I believe this is going to be a template for other water agencies and how they deal with this issue on their watershed and public land. So with that, Aaron, who's really done a nice job, why don't you lead us into this?
Right. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Great.
Yes.
Thanks, Ben.
Out there.
Thanks, Ben, for teeing that off. I guess I can jump right into the goals and objectives of this plan, which we're calling the Wildfire Resilience Plan. So the overall goal of this plan was to increase district wildfire preparedness to ensure water system resilience and also protection of neighboring communities. The plan actually has a couple of objectives. The primary objective is to develop a comprehensive fire preparedness document that really integrates all the available information that we have, identifies data gaps, and also develops a process and a structure for improving our resilience and preparedness by implementing a set of recommended actions. Some of the secondary objectives to this plan is that we're going to use it to inform both internally our organization, the board, our agency partners, and also the public of our current preparedness status and needs. We're also going to use this plan to inform our capital improvement program planning efforts, and also as a mechanism to initiate dialogue and comments and input from others. So I know we're in the middle of a global pandemic, so I don't want to take too much from that, but really it was just a couple of months ago that we were dealing with public safety power shutoffs, which was really an ancillary effect of wildfire. So wildfire is something that happens and has happened previously in Marin County. We're familiar with it. What you're seeing right now on the screen are just a couple select fires of the largest acreage in Marin County within our service area. The 1923 fire, which started up near Novato and burned down towards the southwest. We also had the Mill Fire, the Bill Williams Fire of 1891, and the fire of 1929, which burned a portion of Mill Valley. As you can see, this selected list of fires burned over our watershed, so it's really important from a water supply perspective, and as well as the community that's integrated within those boundaries. If that doesn't convince you that wildfire is something we need to plan for, you could look at the CPUC Fire-Threat Map, which is their delineation of what is the level of risk associated with a utility-caused wildfire. So this map is distributed and developed for the entire state. They have 3 different categories. The 2 you should really care about are Tier 2 elevated and Tier 3 extreme. The blow-up map in the center right shows our service area in black. You can see the majority of it is either covered by Tier 2, which is yellowish orange, or Tier 3, which is extreme. As a side note, the green boundary is our watershed, and the dots, the circles, the triangles, and the squares are actually above ground district assets, so pump stations, tank sites, and treatment plants. So with all that in mind, what we did is we formed a wildfire task force. It has approximately 15 staff from different groups within the district. We held approximately 15 meetings over the course of the last 12 months. And what we really did is developed this draft plan that we have here tonight and will make available on our website. And what we really did is we wanted to focus on 4 focus areas. And this plan, the purpose of it is to stay consistent with emergency planning conventions. So tonight I'm just going to quickly go over a couple of the sections, section 3 through section 7, focusing on mitigation, planning and preparedness, response, and recovery. So threat identification is really the first step. It's taking a broad-based review and assessment of potential impacts to district operations associated with natural disasters. And as I said, in this particular case, we're dealing with wildfire. It could be seismic, it could be pandemic, what have you. And what we did is we identified 3 different types of hazards. Those 3 are ignition sources. So for example, PG&E power lines crossing the watershed or the service area. Could also be hot work, people welding in a trench. There are also direct hazards. So direct hazards we categorize as those which would directly contribute to the damage or destruction of a district asset. One example in the bottom right-hand corner is a pump station of the city of Napa's that was destroyed in the 2017 Atlas Fire. The third category of hazard that we identified are really ancillary threats that still have the potential to disrupt our system performance, so our ability to deliver water. It might affect our personnel, their safety, our financial security, or even our staffing. But the critical difference is that it's not directly linked to a threat to an asset. And one example would be the public safety power shutoff. The first focus area that we took a look at was mitigation. So mitigations are actions that could prevent an event, reduce the probability of that event occurring, or reduce the damages associated with that event if that particular event is unavoidable. It includes operational strategies, policies, programs, and best management practices before an event occurs. Some of the things that we looked at were preventative measures, infrastructure hardening, and vegetation management. There are a couple examples of what those are. Preventative measures would be red flag declarations or even hot work procedures. So what do our crews or even our contractors have to implement in terms of best practices to reduce the potential for ignition? There's also infrastructure hardening. What can we do at our pump stations, our culverts, or any of our other facilities to make them less vulnerable to wildfire? And then there's also investment in vegetation management, so implementation of our BIFIP, managing our fuels on the watershed and the interface with the community. The next focus area is planning and preparedness. What it really does is identify available resources. So what do we need? What are the processes and procedures that we need to have in place to facilitate response and recovery? Ideally, you want to do this before an event. What it does is it establishes efficient, focused, and effective response and recovery when that event is happening. Some of the things that we look at and review in the plan are partnering. So what has been our role in developing the Community Wildfire Protection Plan, which was led by Fire Safe Marin, our role and involvement in Fire Safe Marin, our planning process for dealing with public safety power shutoffs, which has been very active. It also includes mutual aid agreements that we have with CalWAR, EMAC, or FireScope, which effectively increase our response capabilities and also the level of protection to district assets when a wildfire were to occur. It also includes investment, so investing in the Fire Flow Improvement Program, the BIFIP, and maintaining our access roads on the watershed, which will be really the points of egress and ingress to fight any wildfires that may occur on the watershed. And it also includes planning and preparedness tools such as wildfire detection cameras, which are strategically located across the county and operated by the county. The next chapter that we looked at was response. And so this includes taking actions necessary to save lives and prevent further damage. So think of this as occurring when the event is happening. What it's really doing is it's taking all that planning that you did in preparedness and putting it into action. The primary way that we do that here at the Water District is initiating our Emergency Operations Center. It's a centralized hub for dealing with any sort of disaster. It, in the future, will be designed to mobilize for wildfire response. We're revamping that whole process to include wildfire threat as a response scenario, so not just focused around seismic events. And as part of that preparation for response, we'll be conducting tabletop exercises. The final step and section that we looked at was actually the recovery. So this includes actions taken to return to normal or safer situations. So this is after the event has passed. It's safe for crews to go back in and really focus on ensuring that we're providing treatment and distribution to our entire service area. It also includes post-event mitigation activities, particularly in regard to a wildfire on the watershed. If we were to have potentially debris flows, sediment deposition into the reservoirs, what are the activities that we could do immediately after an event to preclude that from happening? And there's also a list of other business continuity actions that we want to pursue in the recovery process. So for each one of those focus areas, what the Wildfire Task Force did was identify where we had data gaps and also develop opportunities where we could improve resiliency. That entire process left us with approximately 100 potential recommended actions. Through that process and through the plan, when you take a read through it, you'll see that we've developed an initial prioritization of those recommended actions, and it's really been, to this date, has been based on 4 criteria. Those criteria are, what's the consequence of inaction? So how, if we don't do something, how is it going to affect the core district operations? Is it something that we lose a pump station? Maybe that's not as big a deal as opposed to losing a water treatment plant. How much the action reduces the probability of a wildfire. So in some circumstances, we have measures that will help reduce the ignition. So that would be a direct correlation between reducing the probability of a wildfire. The time required to implement that action, is this something that we can accomplish over the next month? Is this something we could accomplish over 2 years? Or is this a longer term strategy that we need to spend some time planning and pursuing? And then the last item we considered is cost. And these are just planning level, estimates that we utilized. And so when you take a look at the report, the last chapter, you'll see that prioritization that we've developed. It's iterative, and as Ben mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, we're going to be revising it based on stakeholder input. So kind of take them with a grain of salt. That's where the task force ended with their own recommendations. In terms of next steps, spring, summer of 2020, we're releasing the report. We are sharing this plan, and we're going to solicit feedback from key stakeholders, which includes the board, the Marin County Fire Chiefs Association, cities and towns, special interest groups such as Fire Safe Marin, community, and we'd like to hold a community workshop in the future to essentially pull in community input and comments, but maybe not in the near term. So overall, the report is where it is, so we're going to go through this process, and we anticipate completing it in the fall of 2020. Of course, that's pending the current status of events. And the bottom line of this report is that we're really envisioning this document as being a living document, so we're updating it as new information emerges, as other utilities deal with wildfire as a threat, and then integrating lessons learned. So it's a living document. It's not final. It never will be final. It's a tool for us. And with that, I'll take questions.
So do we have any questions from the board or comments?
Yeah, this is Larry again. Is the document going to be posted on the website?
Yes, we have hard copies for you tonight. Our planning for this has gone on for quite a while, as you may imagine. But yes, it's going to be posted tomorrow on the website. We will be sending the board your hard copies, and then we'll be initiating, of course, being thoughtful about the timing with everything else going on right now, but initiating over some time period our outreach with the stakeholder groups that Aaron identified and getting those comments. And we expect that we'll be bringing it back to the board probably one more time before it's final to reflect the input of the stakeholders.
And are staff planning on doing some kind of a community meeting with stakeholders, a public meeting?
Yeah, Aaron had mentioned that as the last one, and we went through it pretty quickly. At least one community workshop we're anticipating holding to present it in, a rich presentation and discussion and getting feedback and hearing directly from the community on this.
Okay, that sounds good. When and if to get our current situation.
Yeah, I mean, obviously that will need to be resolved, but I was particularly interested in that. I sense, as I'm sure the rest of the board and many members of the staff, that this is an issue of huge concern locally. And so I'm hoping that we can do significantly more than one meeting. And I'd like to see them also suggest that we also think about planning them in various parts of the district and involving some of the other community leaders, city council members, the supervisors. I'm sure you guys are already thinking about this, but I think this is exactly the kind of thing where, our role as a community convener is really important. So I'd like to really see that part of the plan get fleshed out. But I think this is a great direction, and I want to thank the staff for all its work on this.
Very, very thoughtful effort in this. It's very impressive and clearly the right direction.
I think Cynthia's comments are very important. And I see this as a 2021 deadline, not a 2020. I think to incorporate those kind of meetings is going to push us out 4 or 5 months.
Yeah.
So just be advised of that. I suppose the document can go forward and then we can have a further discussion, being it's a living document, so it doesn't really get hurt. The other part I couldn't quite follow was the issue about equipment. There was a picture of a bunch of trucks looking down on it, but there wasn't any list of what we need or what we don't need. At least I didn't see one. So, hopefully that gets filled out a little more. I know that there have been numerous comments from Minikes about the fact that we are short fire engines and things like that. So I think we need to make sure that we're on the right page there. I don't know, Aaron, if the fire department has reviewed our thinking. The fire companies have looked at what we're doing in that sense, or do they just look at it as a conglomerate that all the equipment's available to us whenever we need it, if we need it?
Great comments. In the report, we do discuss the specific equipment we have, and among the recommendations, we do identify the need to take a considered review of the state of the equipment and develop a plan to cyclically replace and modernize the equipment. And we are planning specifically to reach out to the Fire Chiefs Association and maybe even engage some separate fire chiefs and fire departments on this. There is, as you noted, so much we can benefit from those key stakeholders in terms of refining this plan going forward. So I wanted to. I'm sorry, another comment, Armando?
Go ahead, Ben, and finish.
No, I was concluding.
Oh, I was just going to extend my thanks to Aaron for the continued good work that you've done and are doing for the district. It really is critical. And I, with getting this posted, I know that we'll be getting comments hopefully in writing, because who knows how long this current situation is going to continue. And it may be the case that folks have plenty of time to look at this and submit comments, especially since that's uncertain in terms of when we'll all be back to some level of normal. But really, thank you so much for, we obviously, as a community and as a state, we are juggling a bunch of concurrent critical issues. And I know, and I really appreciate the leadership of the district in keeping an eye on all of these balls that are all important. Thanks.
I just wanted to, you aren't here, but you'll be getting your copy of this. And just one more note that this kind of effort, this report, and just the level of resources that go into doing something like this. It was throughout the entire organization that contributed, but of course, Aaron leading it and Crystal as a champion to see it through. Typically, an agency our size would consult out for something like this. And the benefit of really doing this in-house is a level of detail and ownership in the document, and it'll be a living document, I expect, for years, maybe decades to come. So I am really thankful and proud of staff for having pulled this off at this draft stage. So with that, we'll good job. We'll move on to item 8.
Do we have any public comment
Oh,
on that
thank
item?
you.
I do not have any on that item.
Thank you. Okay. With that, we'll transition to item 8. And that's an update on the latest phase of our AMI Advanced Metering Infrastructure Project by Carrie Pollard, our Water Efficiency Manager.
Good evening, members of the board. So what I have before you is a contract amendment to implement Phase 3 of the AMI pilot project. So back in February of 2019, the district received notice from DWR that there was a potential additional funding, grant funding that was available from Prop 84. You may recall that the district received funding from this Prop 84 money for Phase 1. And when DWR reached out to us and thought that there was an opportunity to get additional funding, of course, we had to go through a formal process, which we did. We initiated in June of 2019. We sent a letter to DWR requesting an additional $350,000 to continue the expansion of AMI within the service area. Just back in January, just a couple months ago, we received official notification that the grant agreement has been amended to provide that additional $350,000. So staff is looking to continue expansion of this technology within our service area with an additional 860 AMI meters. There is a $106,000 district contribution, which would go towards materials and staff labor for the installation of those meters. And what you have before you this evening is a request for the general manager to negotiate and execute amendment number 4 with automated meter and automation with an amount not to exceed $350,000 to purchase the additional meters for Phase 3 of the pilot projects.
So with that, are there any questions from the board?
I have none.
None.
Glad we're getting going. I move approval.
Second.
Okay, do we have any public comments?
Director Bragman,
Aye.
Director Gibson,
Aye.
Director Kohler,
Aye.
Director Quintero,
Aye.
Director Russell,
Aye.
Okay, now moving to item 9. This is a request to authorize the general manager to execute miscellaneous agreement number 5841 for contract interim general counsel services. And this is due to the recent retirement of the district's longtime general counsel, Mary Casey. And the general counsel position is currently vacant. And until the position can be filled on a permanent basis, staff is requesting that the board authorize the general manager to execute a contract for as needed contract interim general counsel services. And the contract general counsel under the contract and consistent with the long history of the organization would report to the board of directors and support the general manager and staff. Staff is recommending Bob Maddow and the firm of Bold, Polsner, Maddow, Nelson, Judson, PC to provide interim services to the district on an as-needed basis. Mr. Maddow has a long and strong history of providing both in-house general counsels and contract general counsels for, I believe, over 40 years. And of course, the board did have an opportunity to review the proposals and weigh in on this recommendation. So with that, are there any questions from the board? Are there any public?
I would like to,
Go ahead.
so this is Cynthia. I just want to express my very strong support for this proposal. Not only do I think we need somebody in the interim, I've worked for decades with Bob Maddow, and I think he's a great choice for the district. So I'm really pleased to see this going forward.
I move approval.
I did
Second.
want to
Can I?
public comments on this item, see if we have any.
Oh, sorry about that.
Also, really quickly, prior to approval, I just wanted to point out a few things in the agreement to the board that aren't contained in our standard legal services agreements. If you go to section 2.3, it's on the first page of the agreement. I just want the board to be aware Mr. Maddow is not going to be providing any labor and employment law services to the district under this agreement. As noted, that is not his firm's specialty, so I just wanted to point that out to the members of the board. Additionally, regarding the costs for this agreement, it's not to exceed $400,000 in any fiscal year. However, we're not committing any funds. It's on an as-needed basis, and the rates are set forth in Section 3 of the agreement. And then a couple other things that I wanted to point out. If you reference Section 17 in the agreement, 17.1 specifically notes that Mr. Maddow's firm represents North Marin Water District. If there were to be any instances where there's a conflict of interest, his firm would recuse themselves. And our understanding is that North Marin is a long-term client of Mr. Maddow's firm, so therefore they would represent North Marin in that matter. And provide us a backup list of substitute counsel. So I just wanted the board to be aware of those matters before approving this item.
Okay, did we check for public comments?
Yes.
We have no public comments. So with that, any other board comments or a motion?
I think I made the motion.
And I've second.
Director Bragman,
Aye.
Director Gibson,
Aye.
Director Kohler,
Aye.
Director Quintero, Director Quintero,
Oh, no, he's off now.
Director Russell,
Aye.
Excuse me. I received some information from Director Quintero. Do you want me to read his comment?
Sure.
Okay. So for agenda item 9, he says, I support the contract for the Interim General Counsel Services Award, MA 5841.
Okay, we have adopted the contract, and I believe we do have a comment from Mr. Maddow, who has tied in.
Thank you, Mr. Harnstein. I appreciate it, and I want to appreciate the comments from the board members and the action that the board has just taken. I would be there under normal circumstances. As you note, these are not normal circumstances. We look forward to this interim assignment and working closely with the general manager and Mr. Mills, who have been extremely helpful to us in getting ready to take on this assignment. We will work as closely as necessary with them. We will generally do so remotely to the extent we can, if for no other reason, and to hold down costs, and also to comply with the various orders that we are all now living under in the counties of Marin and Contra Costa County, where our office is, and Alameda County, where I live. But with those restrictions, we believe we can meet the needs that the district has, and we look forward very much to it. And we appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Maddow. With that, we'll move to item 10. This is designation of Senior Administrative Assistant to Interim Board Secretary. And as the board knows, our long-term board secretary is retired, and we'll be, with your authorization, begin the recruitment process in the interim. We would like to have a designated interim board secretary to perform official actions under that. So I'll take any comments if there are from board members. Move to, do we have any public comments on this item?
No public comments, but Director Quintero has provided his comments. Would you like that read now?
Sure.
I support the designation of Senior Administrative Assistant to Interim Board Secretary.
Okay, with that, is there a motion for this item?
I'd move it.
Second.
Director Bragman,
Aye.
Director Gibson,
Aye.
Director Kohler,
Aye.
Director Russell.
Aye.
Okay, moving on to item 11. We have 11A and B, and they're slightly linked, and I'll explain that. Item 11A is authorizing the recruitment to proceed with hiring a board secretary. As you just concluded, an interim secretary appointment. This is a slight change in the title and function of this position to a dedicated board secretary role, which is very consistent for an organization this size. The prior position had been part board secretary and part support to the GM and the executive team. And this would be, again, consistent with a typical organization, district this size, dedicated board secretary providing key support for a range of staff activities in preparation for board meetings. As you know, a range of important board support and questions that come from the board and other related activities to keep the district operating. So with that, I would take any comments or questions the board may have. Do we have any public comments?
Ben, is this adding, is it creating a new position?
So
or is it
that's a good
hiding-
question, Director Bragman. Item 11A and 11B we're taking Stephanie's position, the prior board secretary, and dedicating that as a board secretary. Item 11B is converting a vacant administrative secretary position to an executive assistant title and function. So we're really, this was in recognition of an assessment that we did in terms of the scope of the prior board secretary that was very expansive and challenging. And we think having the dedication of a board secretary, everything I mentioned, including and probably foremost, compliance of the Brown Act in terms of the preparation of the documents, the posting of documents, for not just board meetings, but all of our committee meetings and other board-related activities and functions that we do. And then the conversion of the administrative secretary position is to provide high-level support to the general manager, general counsel, legal team, and other members of the executive team in a range of administrative functions, but also kind of high-level administrative tasks and projects. For example, we're talking now and we're undertaking, updating all of our policies and procedures, and as you know that it's time to do that. A key part of that is having a defined process and program for maintaining them, so we don't find in 20 years we're in a similar position we're in now, and that would be housed there. We talked at a prior board meeting about our document retention policy, and really on a broader level, it's our document management policy district-wide, and that would be another responsibility, and it's really key and essential for the production of documents we have and navigating them, the long history of this organization, and they're so critical. So that's just really a sampling of the sort of responsibilities for the executive assistant position. So we can take them one at a time, but that's a long answer to your question, Director Bragman. The short answer is
okay.
no.
I mean, I think, it helps for me just to get a more holistic understanding, and I certainly understand the necessity and the difficulty of the first part, the first job, 11A, just compliance with Brown Act, doing all that. So, no, it sounds logical and, consistent with our long-term organizational needs. So, no, I support it.
Well, I think I support it too, but I'm not sure I got the answer to the question there. Is it adding, are we adding is our employment population increased?
Right. I did wander there for a moment. The short answer is no. We have 2 vacant positions. Stephanie's old position that was actually called Secretary to the General Manager and Board Secretary, something like that. And that is being converted to a Board Secretary title and responsibility. We also have a vacant Administrative Secretary position that is being elevated to provide the second half of responsibilities in a fuller fashion that Stephanie had as well. So we're taking that combined role that she had, we're enriching both elements and taking 2 vacant positions to fill both of those roles. So no additional positions.
And would that be within our current budgetary restraints, or?
Yes, we do identify that we do have the budget to support 11A is the same as Stephanie's salary. 11B, because it's elevating an administrative secretary position through this budget cycle. The delta, which is noted in the amount of $19,000, I believe, will be funded through salary savings. So the difference in this salary compared to the administrative secretary, but both positions were themselves, the original positions, part of the budget. So we do have the budget funds to support this.
So Ben, where was the other administrative assistant?
The administrative secretary, the prior position on item 11B, provided administrative support for the conservation department. That group has 2 administrative support positions, which organizationally is very atypical. And the group has looked and assessed that they can meet their roles and responsibilities with the 1 position, which has freed this position up to be converted.
Okay, thank you. So I'd move approval of 11A and 11B.
Really quickly, do we have public comment?
I keep doing this. We do need to see, do we have any public comment on item 11?
No public comment on item 11.
Okay, so with that, I think did we have a second too? Okay.
Director Bragman?
Aye.
Director Gibson?
Aye.
Director Kohler?
Aye.
Director Russell?
Aye.
Director Quintero writes his support for filling both vacancies for the board secretary and the executive assistant to the general manager.
Okay, we're almost done here. Moving to item 12, Mike.
Thank you, Ben. So a recent internal promotion has created a senior engineering technician vacancy in my department. This position provides a wide range of duties, including reviewing, editing, and correcting CAD drafting documents prepared by records and drafting staff for a wide range of district records and maintenance and repair records. This position supports mapping, prepares record drawings for capital improvement projects, provides mapping and support for the district's underground service alert and pipe location program, and also assists in conducting field mark and locates. And so tonight we're requesting that the board authorize the general manager to recruit and hire one senior engineering technician position.
Do we have any board comments, questions on that? Any public comments?
No public comments.
We have a motion.
I move approval.
Or second.
Director Bragman,
Aye.
Director Gibson,
Aye.
Director Kohler,
Aye.
Director Russell.
Aye.
Okay, with that, we'll move to item 13, which is the future meeting schedule and agenda items. Noting that, as was mentioned earlier, the upcoming watershed meeting for March 19th and the Operations Committee meeting for March 20th have been canceled. Those items will roll into future upcoming meetings. Also noting, as so many conferences are, this is happening to, the Aqua Spring Conference has been canceled. I am going to strive to maintain the June 5th board annual retreat, as I do feel it's important for an organization like ours once a year to have that opportunity. And we just may be creative in how we figure out how to proceed with it. So with that, any final comments from any board members?
I want to congratulate you on the whole performance tonight of you and the staff, and just the fact that you've got it all kept together under dire circumstances.
I'll second that.
Really well done.
I'll say this is harder than it looks. So with that, meeting
It is
concluded.
harder than it looks, isn't it? Yes,
Yeah.
we know. Don't worry.